I still remember the day my world was turned upside down. It was a typical morning, with the sun shining brightly over our quiet neighborhood. But as I stepped out into the crisp air, something caught my eye. The trees across the street, which had stood tall for years, were being torn down. The sound of chainsaws and the rumble of heavy machinery filled the air, disrupting the peaceful atmosphere that had always defined our community. At first, I thought it was just routine maintenance, or perhaps a new development project. But as I watched the workers move closer to my property, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. They were setting up equipment on my land equipment that looked nothing like anything I had ever seen before. It was then that I realized something was very wrong. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long and arduous battle with my homeowners association, HOA, over a cell tower they had decided to build without my consent. The thought sent shivers down my spine. How could they do this without even consulting me? What other secrets were they hiding? As I stood there, frozen in shock and confusion, I couldn't help but wonder what else was happening behind the scenes. It seemed like a simple case of overreach. But as the days unfolded, I discovered that there was much more at play. Before I take you through the twists and turns of this incredible journey, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you're new here, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button for more gripping stories like this one. My name is Michael, and I've had the privilege of calling this beautiful community my home for over a decade. It's a place where neighbors become like family, and the natural beauty of the surroundings makes every day feel like a gift. I've always been proud of our neighborhood's charm and the sense of community that we share. However, everything changed when I discovered that the Homeowners Association, HOA, had secretly planned to build a cell tower on my land. I remember the day I moved here like it was yesterday. The sun was shining, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. It was the perfect place to start a new chapter in my life. Over the years, I've watched our community grow and flourish. We've had our fair share of challenges, but we've always come together to support each other. To understand how this situation unfolded, let me take you back to how our community was formed. Our neighborhood was developed with the intention of creating a harmonious blend of nature and modern living. The HOA was established to ensure that our community maintained its beauty and charm. They were responsible for managing the common areas, enforcing community rules, and making decisions that would benefit everyone. Initially, I trusted the HOA to make decisions in the best interest of our community. They seemed to genuinely care about our well-being and the aesthetic appeal of our neighborhood. However, as time went on, I began to notice subtle changes in their approach. Decisions were being made without much transparency, and there seemed to be a growing sense of secrecy around their activities. The day I found out about the cell tower was a shock. I was in my backyard when I saw a group of workers setting up equipment on my property. I had no idea what they were doing, but something didn't feel right. When I approached them, they told me that the HOA had authorized the construction of a cell tower. I was stunned. How could they make such a significant decision without consulting me or any of the other homeowners? This was the moment I realized I had to take action. I couldn't just stand by and watch, as my property was used for something I didn't agree with. But little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long and arduous journey. As I began to investigate further, I discovered that the HOA had been planning this project for months. They had conducted meetings in secret, and none of the homeowners had been informed. It was clear that they had overstepped their authority, but I was determined to fight for my rights and protect my community. The moment I confronted the HOA about the cell tower, their response was swift and unapologetic. They claimed they had every right to build the tower due to a clause buried deep within our community's bylaws. According to them, this clause gave them authority to make decisions about utility improvements without needing homeowner approval. At first, I felt defeated. How could I fight against something that seemed so official? But then, I started asking questions. I wanted to see this clause for myself. So, I requested the HOA documents and spent hours combing through pages of legal jargon. And that's when I found the clause they were referring to. It did exist, but what they didn't mention was that it didn't apply to privately owned properties like mine. My land wasn't part of the common areas they had jurisdiction over. And then came the real kicker. My property rights included something most people don't even think about: spectrum rights. Spectrum rights are essentially rights to the airwaves above your property, and in my case, they were explicitly protected in my deed. This meant that any attempt to build a cell tower on my land without my consent wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I knew I couldn't let them get away with it. But where do you even start when you're up against an organization as entrenched as an HOA? The first thing I did was reach out to local authorities. I filed complaints with zoning officials and environmental agencies, highlighting not only the violation of my property rights, but also the potential impact on our community's health and environment. I didn't stop there. I contacted legal experts, people who specialized in property law and telecommunications regulations. Some of them were shocked when I explained what was happening. "They're building a cell tower without consulting homeowners?" one lawyer asked incredulously during our first meeting. "That's a massive overreach." Hearing those words gave me hope. Maybe I wasn't alone in this fight after all. As I dug deeper into the HOA's plans, more troubling details began to emerge. For starters, they hadn't conducted any environmental impact assessments before approving the construction. The site for the tower was dangerously close to a wetland area that housed protected wildlife species. And then there were the health concern studies have shown that living near cell towers can increase exposure to electromagnetic radiation, which has been linked to various health issues. Armed with evidence, I decided it was time for a face-to-face confrontation with the HOA board. They held their meetings in a small community center down the road, a place that used to feel welcoming but now felt like enemy territory. When I walked into that meeting, all eyes turned toward me. The board members sat behind a long table, looking smug and confident, as if they'd already won this battle before it even began. But I wasn't there to back down. I presented my case calmly but firmly. "You don't have the authority to build this tower on my property," I said, holding up copies of my deed and zoning regulations for everyone to see. "Not only are you violating my rights, but you're also putting our community at risk by ignoring environmental and health concerns." The room grew tense as murmurs spread among the other homeowners who had come to watch. Some of them hadn't even known about the tower until that meeting. They were just as shocked as I had been. The board members tried to dismiss me at first, claiming they had followed all necessary procedures. But when I pressed them on specifics, asking for proof of environmental assessments and homeowner consultations, they started fumbling for answers. One board member finally admitted, "We didn't think it would be an issue." That sentence hung in the air like a cloud of smoke after an explosion. They didn't think it would be an issue? How could they justify making such a monumental decision without considering its consequences? That meeting ended without resolution, but it marked a turning point in my fight against the HOA. It was clear that they weren't going to back down easily, and neither was I. The confrontation with the HOA was only the beginning. What followed was a battle that tested every ounce of my patience, resilience, and determination. The board wasn't willing to admit they had overstepped their authority, and I wasn't about to let them trample on my rights or the rights of my neighbors. This wasn't just about a cell tower anymore. It was about standing up to an abuse of power. It didn't take long for the situation to escalate into a full-blown legal battle. I filed a lawsuit against the HOA, citing violations of my property rights, spectrum rights, and local zoning laws. I also included evidence of their failure to conduct an environmental impact assessment and their lack of transparency with the community. My legal team was confident we had a strong case, but that didn't make the process any less daunting. The HOA, of course, lawyered up as well. They argued that the cell tower was in the best interest of the community, claiming it would improve cellular reception and increase property values. But their arguments fell flat when we presented our evidence in court. I'll never forget sitting in that courtroom, watching as my attorney laid out our case piece by piece. We showed how the HOA had ignored my spectrum rights, how they had bypassed critical environmental regulations, and how they had failed to obtain proper permits for the construction. It was a meticulous takedown of their entire argument. But it wasn't just about the legal arguments, it was also about the community's voice. During the trial, several of my neighbors came forward to testify on my behalf. They shared how they felt blindsided by the HOA's actions and expressed their concerns about the potential health and environmental risks of the cell tower. Their support meant everything to me. It reminded me that this fight wasn't just about meat, it was about all of us. The courtroom drama stretched on for weeks. There were moments when I doubted myself, moments when I wondered if I was in over my head. The HOA's lawyers were aggressive, trying to paint me as someone who was standing in the way of progress. But every time I felt like giving up, I reminded myself why I had started this fight in the first place, to protect my home and my community. And then came the day we'd all been waiting for the judge's ruling. When the judge announced their decision, it felt like time stood still. The court ruled in my favor, declaring that the HOA had indeed overstepped their authority by attempting to build a cell tower on my property without my consent. The judge also criticized their lack of transparency and failure to follow proper procedures. I can't even describe the wave of relief that washed over me at that moment. It wasn't just a personal victory, it was a victory for everyone who had ever felt powerless against an organization like an HOA. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize how important it is for homeowners to be vigilant about their rights. It's easy to assume that organizations like HOAs have your best interests at heart, but this experience taught me that you can't take anything for granted. You have to ask questions, demand transparency, and hold people accountable when they overstep their bounds. This journey also taught me the value of community. My neighbors stood by me through thick and thin, offering their support and encouragement when I needed it most. Together, we proved that there's strength in numbers and that ordinary people can make a difference when they stand up for what's right. In the end, the cell tower was never built. The land where they had planned to construct it remains untouched, a reminder of what we fought for and what we achieved together as a community. But this experience didn't just end with a courtroom victory. It sparked real change in our neighborhood. After the ruling, our community to reform the HOA board. We established new policies to ensure greater transparency and accountability moving forward. No more secret meetings or unilateral decisions. Everything would be done with input from homeowners. It was a hard-won victory, but it showed me that even in the face of adversity, justice can prevail if you're willing to fight for it. This isn't just my story. It's a story for anyone who's ever felt powerless against authority or doubted their ability to make a difference. If you're facing your own battle, whether it's with an HOA or any other organization trying to take advantage of you, know this: you have more power than you think. As I sit here today, telling you this story, I can't help but think about how far we've come, not just as a community, but as individuals who learn to stand up for ourselves. What started as a seemingly impossible battle against an organization with power and influence turned into a victory that united us and reminded us of the strength we all have when we refuse to back down. I hope my story inspires you to be proactive about your property rights and to never underestimate the power of community. If you're facing a similar situation, whether it's with an HOA, a corporation, or any entity trying to infringe on your rights, don't let fear or doubt stop you. You have the ability to make a difference, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Start by educating yourself. Know your rights as a homeowner, as a citizen, and as someone who has a voice. Don't be afraid to ask questions or challenge decisions that don't feel right. And most importantly, don't underestimate the impact of rallying others around your cause. Together, we are always stronger. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that standing up for what's right isn't just about protecting your own interests, it's about creating a better future for everyone around you. When you fight for justice, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for your family, your neighbors, and even those who come after you. Respect for authority is important. I truly believe in that. Rules and regulations exist for a reason, and they're meant to protect us and create order in our lives. But respect should never come at the cost of individual rights. When authority oversteps its bounds or uses its power irresponsibly, it's our duty to question it and hold it accountable. This journey has taught me that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the greatest victories. It wasn't easy standing up to the HOA. There were moments when I felt overwhelmed, moments when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. But every step of the way, I reminded myself of what was at stake, not just my property, but my principles. And now, looking back on everything that happened, the sleepless nights, the tense courtroom sessions, the heated confrontations, I can say with certainty that it was all worth it. Because in the end, justice prevailed. The cell tower was never built. Our community came together stronger than ever before, and we proved that no matter how big or powerful an organization may seem, they are not above accountability. I want you to think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever faced a situation where you felt powerless? Have you ever been told that something was just the way it is, and felt like there was nothing you could do about it? If so, I want you to know this. You are not powerless. You have rights. You have a voice. And when you use that voice, when you stand up for yourself, you can create change. I'm sharing this story because I know there are people out there who feel like they're fighting their own battles right now. Maybe it's with an HOA like mine. Maybe it's with a landlord, or a corporation, or even a government agency. Whatever it is, I want you to know that you're not alone, and that your fight matters. So here's my call to action. Take control of your situation. Educate yourself on your rights. Speak up when something doesn't feel right. And don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's from legal experts, local authorities, or even your neighbors. And if this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or inspired you in some way, please share it with others who might need encouragement right now. Let them know that they're not alone in their struggles and that justice is always worth fighting for. As I close this chapter of my life and share it with all of you watching today, I feel immense gratitude, not just for the outcome of this battle, but for everything it taught me along the way. It taught me the importance of vigilance and courage. It showed me the power of community and unity. And most importantly, it reminded me that even in the face of adversity, there is always hope. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear my story today. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. Never let anyone tell you that your voice doesn't matter or that your fight isn't worth it. Because when we stand together, when we refuse to back down, we can achieve incredible things. Before we wrap up, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Have you ever faced a situation like this? Share your thoughts, I'd love to hear them. And if you're new here or enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button so we can continue sharing stories like these stories of resilience, justice, and hope. Thank you again for being part of this journey with me today. Remember, stand tall, stay strong, and never stop fighting for what's rightfully yours.